It feels like something has shifted in Britain, doesn't it? A dark wave of violence that seems to come out of nowhere, leaving devastation behind. It's the kind of violence that doesn't just end lives. It shatters our sense of safety and leaves us all asking the same question, from murders that defy all explanation to crimes committed by those who are supposed to protect us. The nation is searching for answers. Tonight we're looking at the disturbing cases that have shaken the country to its core and revealing the forces that might be driving this frightening new era of crime. The Nottingham Attacks. A preventable tragedy. Some crimes don't just shock a city, they leave a permanent scar. On June 13th, 2023, Nottingham woke up to an absolute nightmare. A summer morning that should have been ordinary would end in grief, confusion, and a desperate manhunt for a killer who had moved through the quiet streets like a ghost. The first victims were two university students, Barnaby Weber and Grace O'Malley Kumar, both just 19 years old. They were bright, talented, and at the very beginning of their adult lives. Barnaby was a gifted cricketer known for his warm personality. Grace, a medical student and talented hockey player, was fiercely loyal and protective of her friends. They were simply walking home after an end-of-term night out, their whole futures ahead of them. At around 4 a.m., their lives were extinguished in a sudden and horrifically violent attack. The attacker, a man dressed all in black, emerged from the shadows in a frenzied assault. It was merciless. Barnaby suffered at least 10 stab wounds. Grace, in an act of incredible bravery, tried to fight him off and protect her friend, but was stabbed 23 times. But the killer wasn't finished. After murdering the students, he walked calmly for nearly 2 miles. He made a chilling phone call to his brother saying, "This will be the last time I speak to you. Take the family out of the country." When his brother asked if he was going to do something stupid, his reply was cold. "It's already done." Minutes later, he tried to force his way into a residential hostel, but was fought off. He continued his hunt. On Magdala Road, he found his next victim, Elianne Coates, a 65-year-old primary school caretaker, just 4 months from retirement. He was a devoted family man and a cornerstone of his community. The killer attacked him with the same brutality, stole his van, and left him for dead. Now with a vehicle, the attacker used it as a weapon, deliberately driving into pedestrians at a bus stop before he was finally cornered and tasered by police. The man responsible was Valdo Calocan. As details emerged, Nottingham's shock turned to anger. How could this have happened? The investigation would reveal a disturbing history of missed opportunities and systemic failures that allowed a profoundly dangerous man to walk the streets. Calocan had been diagnosed with paranoid schizophrenia in 2020. Over 3 years, he'd been detained in hospital 4 times. There were repeated incidents of violence. In September 2021, he assaulted a police officer and a warrant was issued for his arrest, but it was never executed. For 9 months before the killings, he was wanted by police but remained free. The warning signs were glaring. He'd told medical staff he was hearing voices telling him to harm people. His family had repeatedly raised concerns. In January 2022, after allegedly assaulting his flatmates, he wasn't detained under the Mental Health Act. 9 months before the attacks, he was discharged from the care of his community mental health team because of non-engagement. For the next 9 months, he had no recorded contact with health services. The prosecution accepted Calocan's plea of guilty to manslaughter on the grounds of diminished responsibility. He was sentenced to an indefinite hospital order and will likely spend the rest of his life in a high-security hospital. The verdict was met with fury by the families of Barnaby, Grace, and Elianne, who felt the charge should have been murder. Their relentless fight for answers led to the government confirming in early 2025 that a full judge-led public inquiry would take place to scrutinize the actions of all agencies involved. The case of Valdo Caloocan is a portrait of a system that failed at every level. It's the story of a man who fell through the cracks and of the 3 innocent people who paid the ultimate price. This wasn't just one tragic event. It's a symptom of what happens when systems designed to protect us break down. But the threat isn't always so visible. Sometimes the greatest evil hides in plain sight, concealed behind a uniform and a badge of authority. This leads us to a case that has shattered public trust in the police to its very foundations. The predator in a police uniform. For nearly 2 decades, David Carrick was a police officer. He was even part of the elite Parliamentary and Diplomatic Protection Command, an armed officer trusted to guard the Houses of Parliament. To the public, he was a symbol of safety. In private, he was a monster, one of Britain's most prolific sexual offenders. His name is now synonymous with systemic police failure. His reign of terror spanned from 2003 to 2020. During this time, he subjected at least a dozen women to a relentless campaign of rape, abuse, and humiliation. He used his status as a police officer as both a lure and a weapon. He'd meet women on dating apps, telling them things like, "Trust me, I am the safest person you can be around." But once he gained their trust, the sadistic nature of the man his colleagues called Bastard Dave was revealed. The details of his crimes are profoundly disturbing. He controlled every aspect of his victims' lives. What they wore, when they ate, when they slept. He isolated them, controlled them financially, called them his slave, urinated on them, and whipped them with a belt. He would lock his victims, naked, in a small cupboard under his stairs for hours. His police-issued warrant card and firearm became tools of terror, and he held one terrifying threat over all of them. Because he was a police officer, no one would ever believe them. For years, he was right. The Metropolitan Police had 9 separate opportunities to stop David Carrick before his final arrest. Allegations of harassment, domestic violence, and even rape were made against him throughout his career, but he faced no serious discipline and was allowed to continue serving as an armed officer. The dam of silence finally broke in October 2021, in the wake of the sentencing of another Met officer, Wayne Couzens, for the murder of Sarah Everard. One brave woman felt empowered to come forward. Once Carrick was arrested, and his name was public, other victims began to emerge, each telling a sickeningly similar story. In early 2023, David Carrick pleaded guilty to 49 charges, including 24 counts of rape, related to 12 women. He was sentenced to 36 life sentences with a minimum term of over 30 years. The Met Commissioner admitted the force had failed and that Carrick should not have been a police officer. But even after his conviction, the story wasn't over. In October 2024, new charges were authorized against him for allegations involving 2 more women, with a trial provisionally set for late 2025. The David Carrick case is a horrifying indictment of a police culture that chose to ignore a predator in its midst. It reveals a vetting system riddled with holes and asks a deeply unsettling question: how many more like him are there? When violence is carried out by those in power, it erodes the very fabric of society. But another dark trend is playing out on Britain's streets, one that strikes at the heart of our future. A surge in violence among young people is ending lives before they've even had a chance to begin. This brings us to a crime of shocking suddenness and heartbreaking futility. A life stolen for nothing. Elianne Andam was 15 years old. She was a bright, much-loved girl who dreamed of becoming a human rights lawyer. Her family called her the light of their lives. On the morning of September 27th, 2023, Elianne left for school in Croydon, South London. She would never make it home. On her way, Elianne met a friend who was supposed to exchange some belongings with her ex-boyfriend, 17-year-old Hassan Sentamu. The meeting was tense. Sentamu, wearing a mask and gloves, had brought a large kitchen knife. The argument was over trivial things, including a teddy bear. In a moment of playful loyalty, Elianne grabbed a bag of items back from Sentamu and ran off, laughing. What happened next was an act of savage, disproportionate violence. Sentamu, filled with what prosecutors called white-hot anger, chased Elianne down. He pulled out the knife and stabbed the unarmed 15-year-old girl repeatedly as she lay helpless on the ground. Passers-by rushed to help, but her injuries were too severe. She died at the scene, her life stolen over absolutely nothing. The killer, Hassan Sentamu, was arrested less than 90 minutes later. The investigation revealed this wasn't his first encounter with violence or weapons. He had a history of carrying knives. While awaiting trial, he threatened another inmate, shouting, "Do you want to end up like her 6 feet under?" At his trial, Sentamu pleaded guilty to manslaughter, but denied murder, claiming his autism spectrum disorder meant he'd lost control. The jury didn't buy it. They found him guilty of murder. He was sentenced to life in prison, with a minimum term of 23 years. Elianne's mother condemned the killing as a senseless, monstrous, and evil act, describing the deafening silence that had replaced the joy her daughter brought to their home. Elianne's death is a tragic example of a wider, deeply troubling phenomenon. Knife crime in England and Wales is a persistent crisis, and young people are disproportionately affected. So, when you look at these 3 stories together, what do you see? They're not just random tragedies. They're symptoms of deeper, systemic failings and worrying trends in modern Britain. First, Valdo Calocaine's rampage was the catastrophic result of a complete breakdown in mental health care. Despite 4 hospital detentions and countless red flags, a profoundly ill man was left without proper supervision or treatment. His case shines a light on a mental health system that is tragically under-resourced and often fails to act until it's too late. Then, there's David Carrick. His case exposes a rot of misogyny and failed accountability within policing. For 2 decades, a serial rapist operated from inside an elite police unit. This wasn't just a failure of vetting, it was a failure of culture. It's amplified by national statistics. While there have been very slight improvements, the charge rate for sexual offenses, including rape, was still only around 4.2% in the year to March 2025. When victims believe they won't be taken seriously, predators like Carrick are free to thrive. Finally, the murder of Elianne Andam brings the knife crime epidemic into sharp focus. In the year ending March 2025, police recorded over 53,000 knife-enabled offenses, while that number saw a slight decrease from the year before. The long-term trend is still deeply worrying. In the year ending March 2024, there were over 3,200 knife or offensive weapon offenses committed by children that resulted in a caution or sentence. The reasons are complex, from social deprivation to a culture of fear, but the result is the same, a cycle of violence that cuts short futures. Beyond these cases, other crime trends paint a worrying picture. Shoplifting offenses, for example, have surged to their highest level on record, with over 530,000 incidents in the year to March 2025, a 20% jump from the previous year. Fraud has also increased dramatically. These aren't just headlines, they are symptoms of deeper societal fractures. The stories of the Nottingham Attacks, David Carrick, and Elianne Andam are more than just isolated tragedies. They are warnings. They reveal the devastating consequences when our public services fail, when trust in our institutions is betrayed, and when violence becomes a common response on our streets. These cases show that evil can flourish in the cracks of a broken mental health system, behind the shield of a police badge, and in the hands of a teenager in a fleeting moment of rage. As we grapple with these threats, the question of how to respond, how to heal, and how to prevent the next tragedy remains the most urgent challenge of all. What do you think is behind this wave of crime? Share your thoughts in the comments below. And if you want more in-depth investigations into the stories shaping our world, make sure to subscribe.